Hello there, you ravishing people. This is Chris from TechSpert, and I'm here with the shiny new iPhone XS, £1,000 worth of tech. And we're going to do a quick side-by-side with the Huawei P20 Pro. Also not a cheap phone, but also one of the best Android smartphones of 2018 so far. I'm going to compare them for specs, speed, all the rest of it to see which one might be best for you. And don't forget, for more comparisons and just general hands-on features with the latest and greatest mobile tech, to poke that subscribe button down below. Cheers. So first up, stick them side by side and you'll notice there is a clear design difference, despite the fact that the iPhone XS isn't much smaller in terms of the screen size, 5.8 inches compared with the 6.1 inch Huawei P20 Pro. The Huawei phone does have a good bit of extra height on it. That's mostly thanks to the fact that the iPhone XS has pretty much no bezel down beneath, as you can see there, whereas in the case of the Huawei P20 Pro you do get a slender bezel there with a built-in fingerprint sensor. Now, that fingerprint sensor is something that you don't get here on the iPhone XS. You can only really use face recognition or, of course, ye olde pin entry. You do get a bit of facial recognition here on the P20 Pro as well, and in both cases it's super slick and quick. The rest of the design is pretty similar in both of these smartphones though. As you can see, you've got a nice bit of stainless steel banding around the edge, very shiny in both cases, just catches the light and just breaks up the all glass rear and front as well. These are definitely very glossy smartphones, as you can see probably from that angle there as well. They do pick up quite a lot of scuffs and greasy prints too, so you definitely want to keep a cleaning cloth handy. There you go, picking up all those lovely smudgy marks. Yum yum. You can grab the iPhone XS in a couple of hues. The silver model here, the space grey, or black as normal people would call it, and of course the new gold model as well. However, none of them are quite as deliciously gorgeous as the Huawei P20 Pro with its gradient finish, once you wipe all those smudges off, of course. The way this thing catches the light is simply sublime. As you can see, it changes from a sort of a purple hue down to a bluer colour down beneath. And over on Recombo, we've just unboxed the Morpho Aurora version, which is even more stunning. Neither of these smartphones rock a 3.5mm headphone jack. Unfortunately, you are restricted to basically using a dongle. In the case of the iPhone, you'll need a Lightning dongle. In the case of the Huawei P20 Pro, it's a standard USB Type-C. Good news if you're a bit of a clumsy off, because they are both water resistant as well. IP67 in the case of the P20 Pro, whereas the iPhone XS gets an upgrade to an IP68. So that can be submerged to even greater depths. But basically, either is fine if you happen to drop them in the bogs, accidentally drop them in the sink, something like that. One of the greatest differences between these two phones is, of course, the software running on them. You get a good bit of iOS 12 here in the case of the iPhone XS, and on the Huawei P20 Pro, it is a bit of Android Oreo with Huawei's Emotion UI 8 slapped on top. I could probably spend about half an hour going through just the differences in the software, to be honest, but to sum it up in a general sort of thing, both phones have access to a huge number of apps via Google Play or the App Store. They both support gesture control. In the case of the iPhone, that's pretty much your only option because there are no actual buttons for going home, back from recent apps. You're limited to basically swiping up from the bottom of the screen and then swiping down here to access all of your quick settings. Both phones also support, of course, Face Unlock, or Face ID as it's known here on the iOS device, and all it does is just use that front-facing camera to recognize your mug, and then a quick flick and you're straight in. In case of Huawei P20 Pro, it's super fast. Just quick tap of the power button, you barely even see the lock screen, straight into it. Basically, they both have the same essential pack of features, such as your mobile NFC payments, things like that. Everything that you need is generally on board, and of course, because of those well-stocked app stores, you can grab everything else that you might need. Because I'm not a massive fan of the way that you have to have all your apps cluttered here on the desktops on the iPhone, whereas you can just tuck them away into the apps tray here on the P20 Pro. Definitely a nice little feature. And of course, which one you prefer will also depend on which other devices you have. So for instance, if you've got a MacBook, then the iPhone pairs up really nicely with it. You've got features to throw files between the two, to keep working on documents between the two, things like that. Whereas if you use something like Windows, then Android's probably going to suit you better because it's much easier to transfer files on and off. Even back into the hardware, and of course it is a 5.8-inch OLED screen here in the case of the iPhone XS, and the Huawei P20 Pro is also an OLED screen, but 6.1 inches, that little bit bigger. So iPhone XS has a 2436 by 1125 pixel resolution, nice and sharp. It's basically a little bit sharper than Full HD Plus, which is what you get here on the Huawei P20 Pro. It's 2244 by 1080. But you get nice crisp images in both cases. There's very little difference in terms of the actual sharpness. As you see here, color reproduction is of course quite punchy, as they're both OLED displays, without going over the top or anything like that. It just naturally brings those more vivid hues to life. So definitely when you're browsing your photo galleries, watching a movie, whatever you're doing, the visuals will look rather striking. Both phones support a bit of HDR as well, so if you like a bit of Netflix, for instance, you'll be able to stream the latest TV shows, Netflix exclusives and the rest in HDR. And of course you've got your usual selection of night modes and everything as well, so you can make the visuals nice and easy on the eye when you're viewing your Facebook at 3 AM, whatever you are doing. In the case of the Huawei P20 Pro, you can also hide that notch as well if you don't particularly like it. Just puts a nice black bar across the top there to get it away from view. And of course the iPhone supports Apple's usual True Tone, which is basically night shift but for during the day. If you are in a sort of a darker room, something like that, it'll just again filter the blue light, get everything nice and warm and easy on the eyes. That's something that the Huawei P20 Pro also offers in the form of natural tone. Running the show on the iPhone XS, it's Apple's latest A12 chipset backed by 4 gigs of RAM, and so far certainly seems pleasingly nippy. Everything you tap just loads up in the blink of an eye. You can see here, you can just skim through all of your apps, and of course if you get a bit of multitasking on the go, you can flip through all kinds of stuff. Nice and nippy, so as I say, yet to see a single stutter on this thing. You should be able to play the latest games for quite some time. The Huawei P20 Pro does rock this slightly aging Kirin 970 chipset, so it was brought out end of last year by Huawei. Oh, sorry, just seen some Sunderland transfer news. Exciting times. But even though it is slightly aging tech, still benchmarks really, really nicely. It's backed by 6 gigs of RAM, so that helps to keep everything nice and smooth. And again, just tapping on something just brings it up pretty much instantly. There's no hanging around. So you can see, just straight into your apps, no worries. Now, unfortunately, neither of these phones offer micro SD memory card expansion, so you're basically stuck with whatever storage you choose. In the case of the iPhone, the most bog standard basic model packs just 64 gigs of storage, so especially if you're going to be shooting a lot of 4K footage, things like that, you'll want to upgrade that, and unfortunately that will cost you quite a bit. £1,149 is the 256 gig model. That's the next one up, and you kind of get it all the way up to 512 gigs. Over here on the Huawei P20 Pro, it comes with 128 gigs as standard, so that is twice the amount that you get on the iPhone. However, that is your only option. You can't get it in a 512 model or anything like that, and as I said before, no expandability. So you'll definitely want to make the most of cloud backups if you do shoot a lot of 4K footage. When it comes to the battery tech, of course, there is absolutely no competition. The Huawei absolutely blows the iPhone out of the water. Here on the iPhone XS, you only get a 2658 milliamp cell, whereas over here on the Huawei P20 Pro, it's a mighty 4000 milliamp battery. Frankly, you can cane this thing all day long with games, movie streaming, all the rest, and you'll still have some power when you're tucked up with Teddy at night. In the case of the iPhone XS, I haven't had a chance to fully test it out yet, but so far seems to be pretty standard Apple fare really. I reckon you'll just about make it through the day if you hit it pretty hard, maybe a day and a half if you're a bit more restrained. Thankfully, both phones do support fast charging. In the case of the Huawei P20 Pro, it's the awesomely named Huawei Supercharge. However, if you're hoping to charge your phone wirelessly, then only the iPhone XS will accept that, unfortunately, via the Qi standard. The Huawei P20 Pro, that is a feature that is missing in action, despite the fact that it's got that glass rear. So what about the camera tech? Well, in the case of the iPhone XS, they haven't really updated it much from last year's effort. It's once again a dual lens snapper, as you can see there. So once again, you get a 12 megapixel primary lens with f1.8 aperture, pretty good for those low light shots and everything. And that's backed by a secondary, again, 12 megapixel lens with its time an f2.4, and that's a telephoto lens offering a 2x optical zoom. Good news is, however, that both of those lenses support a bit of OIS, optical image stabilization, so it just helps cut down on any shudder or judder when your hands are a little bit shaky. And around the front you get a 7 megapixel front facing camera with an f2.2 aperture, so not so good in the low light, but it's there if you need it. As for the Huawei P20 Pro, well, frankly this supports one of the best smartphone cameras of 2018. It's a frankly ludicrous 40 megapixel primary lens with an f1.8 aperture, and that's backed by a secondary 20 megapixel monochrome lens with an f1.6 aperture. Those low light shots are really strong. And both of those are accompanied by a third 8 megapixel telephoto lens. This one gives you a 5x hybrid zoom, so that's an optical and digital zoom effect, and it is really impressive, the results. If we jump on into the camera apps, you can see it's a similar sort of layout. You've got your toggles up top, you've got the likes of live photo here on the iPhone, and in this case it's moving pictures, Huawei terms it, and all that does is it just captures a brief snippet of video when you shoot a photo and that just brings your gallery to life as you're flipping through. In the case of the P20 Pro as well, you also have a choice between standard or vivid or smooth colours. The vivid colours mode actually really helps to bring your scenes to life. Even just a dull landscape, it can really boost some colours, really bring out the hues and give it an almost sort of like landscapey portrait style effect. It's very impressive stuff. However, when you are shooting a more vibrant scene, you'll definitely want to dial down to standard, because otherwise it'll just blow out all those colours and it'll look frankly ludicrous. On both phones you can shoot video at up to 4K resolution. However, in the case of the iPhone, you can shoot 4K resolution video at 60 frames per second, whereas you're limited to 30 frames per second here on the P20 Pro. And as for the image stabilization, the iPhone definitely has it. At that 4K resolution, it's a lot less juddery. Unfortunately, the P20 Pro is still quite shaky when you're moving and shooting at Ultra HD. If you actually know what you're doing with the camera, you know your way around ISO levels and all that kind of thing, then the P20 Pro will suit you most, as you get full manual controls. You can shoot in RAW format, as you can see there. That's something you don't get on the iPhone. It's very much basic sort of snapper. It will suit most people, because most people just want to point and shoot, but all you can really do is tweak the brightness levels and that's pretty much it. Of course, in both cases you get a portrait mode, which just uses the dual, on case of the P20 Pro, tri-lens setup in order to capture your subject, real depth of field, and just blur the background nicely. And of course you get various light effects as well here on the iPhone and also here on the P20 Pro. There may have been a bit of copying involved here on the P20 Pro, because that's something that iPhone came out with first. And of course you can shoot usual slow-mo and time-lapse footage as well, which are buried away over here in the More section in the case of the P20 Pro. As you can see, the P20 Pro does offer a few extra bonus features, though none of them particularly notable. And in terms of those front-facing cameras, already mentioned on the iPhone, it's a 7-megapixel f2.2 front facer. Whereas over here on the P20 Pro, it's a 24-megapixel f2.0. So nice sharp selfies and better in those low light conditions. And in both cases, you also get a form of screen flash as well. And that right there in a nutshell is the iPhone XS versus the Huawei P20 Pro. As you can see, quite a few differences between them. Personally, I'm more suited to Android phones. I prefer the general Android software, the layout, the way it's easy to use with Windows machines. But if you already use a lot of Apple devices, then I can see the appeal for the iPhone XS, and it's some really nice premium tech as well. But unfortunately, it is crazy expensive, starting at £1,000 for that basic 64GB model, which is half the storage you get in the standard P20 Pro. So which one do you prefer? Definitely let us know in the comments down below and your reasons why. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more on the latest and greatest mobile tech. Here on TechSpert, I'm going to be doing in-depth camera comparison with the iPhone XS and the likes of the P20 Pro and some other upcoming smartphones, so stay tuned for all of those. And as ever, love you, bye!